now let's move on to more of the UI stuff, right? The best thing that I like about Notion's UI is that it's a plain canvas. You get a page, a white page, and you get to fill that out with stuff that you want to fill out with. So this includes tables, this includes data, this includes text, whatever that might be. Now, how does Notion make that happen? The approach that Notion takes, which I think is separate from what other editors do, is that it uses the keyboard first layout, which I think would initially have been a problem for people because Notion itself is not a dev tool per se, because the niche that you target with Notion only layouts is a dev tool of sorts like Cursor or VS Code. But as people have gotten, as people have started spending 3, 4, 5 hours consecutively on Notion, you start to realize that the cognitive attention it takes to just scroll around is much better spent on using the keyboard to move around your workspace. So what it does is it uses forward slashes, backslashes, and also the one beautiful thing about Notion is that it has inherent markdown support. Now the markdown support is particularly important because people don't usually start off writing in, say, Notion, right? So as a dev who likes to use Notion for maintaining docs, what I usually do is I write out docs, system docs, or PRDs, etc. on my own device, and eventually when I got to share them with my team, share them with folks that I want to review, that I want to get reviewed from, I then add that to Notion and send them a link which is beautifully formatted in Notion. And so native markdown support is very important for that use case, and I think adds a layer of support for folks who do not start off writing in the Notion UI but then switch over for persistence, which is why it's become such a part and parcel of the business workflow, right? Cool. Now, I think the other part that I want to target with Notion, just so this video does not get excessively long, is that Notion in the AI world is particularly well suited in some senses, and I think its design choices might come to bite it in the back in other senses. So why is it well suited? One, it has a huge community built around it, which ensures that the docs, the files, the brain dumps that you would have in Notion are inherently linked with what you do in your code or in your workflow as a knowledge worker, right? So you've put out some stuff in Notion and then you want to leverage that, let's say, in your AI workflow, in your N8N workflow. How do you get that built in? That I think is a very native connection where I think Notion's UI team has been very strong, and also the community has been very strong in requisitioning the right set of details from them so that internal tool navigation is done well. So that's one. But why is it too that Notion is at a disadvantage? Is because of this method of persistence, right? So as I explained to you, positional references in the workspace page and block tables are good when this is how you want to store in your database, but how do you get an AI to act and behave like it knows what this architecture looks like? Because the beauty of AI is that it considers responses and it streams back responses in a way that feels like you're talking to it, which means as soon as something is outputted, a token is outputted, a server-side event comes in from the backend and puts it out in the front end saying this is what the text would look like. But in the case of Notion, when you have several blocks that are being persisted instead of a single stream of text, how do you make that persistence happen is something that Notion is, I believe, struggling with. If you're using N8N or if you're using Cursor to implement the Notion MCP, you know how this gets, because you'll have to send out n number of blog post requests just to get out a result from Notion where a page is persisted. So how do you solve that? I believe Notion is already solving that with their latest Notion MCP release, which I honestly haven't had the time to go through in detail. But the cursory look through it would suggest that they've started implementing a Notion styled markdown format, which makes it easier for cursor to just write out code blocks instead of making block requests, so that everything is streamed out, and then Notion does the parsing on its end rather than the AI having to do a block-based request on its end, which makes the whole process a lot more faster and a lot more AI native, I would say. So I think those are a couple of thoughts on how Notion implemented its UI and how it's looking like in the coming future for an AI-enabled Notion MCP world. Excited to hear what you guys are doing with Notion and how we can improve the UI at Seneca. I'll just be sharing a quick snippet of how Seneca's Notion UI looks like. Just let me know if you have any feedback on that. Cool. See ya.